Are you looking for better shooting experience? How about a facility where you can shoot all of your firearms in the same day? Where you can move and shoot steel, draw from the holster, and practice your rifle work out to 600 yards. Shoot a very challenging sporting clays course or a round of trap or skeet. You can do all that and much more at the Aurora Sportsman's Club. Hi, I'm David Lombardo, president of the Aurora Sportsman's Club. If you love the outdoors, you'll want to know all about Northern Illinois' largest outdoor shooting facility, the Aurora Sportsman's Club. If you're a novice looking for a basic course, an experienced shooter looking for an advanced course, or perhaps you want to participate in your favorite shooting event, or just spend an enjoyable day with a family, the Aurora Sportsman's Club is the only shooting facility in the region that offers all that and more. Interested? Then you won't want to miss the next orientation and tour of the Aurora Sportsman's Club. Call, email, or visit our website today to find out how you can become part of a better shooting experience at the Aurora Sportsman's Club in Waterman, Illinois.
He is the human Molotov cocktail that they can legally throw into the system that stole their lives from them.
So we're going to create a new government that serves you, your family, and your country. It's time for On Target Radio, Chicagoland's only radio show dedicated to the red meat issues that affect your life, from gun control to freedom of speech. Now, debating, debunking, and discussing today's hot issues, here are your hosts, David Lombardo and Gretchen Fritz.
Welcome to On Target Radio. Tonight, David's rant of the week is Liberal Anti-Gun Bias, the Gift That Keeps on Giving. David and Gretchen's guest is Jeff Bourman, a member of the Australian Parliament. He will be Skyping in to talk about the reality of what American liberals call common sense gun control like they have in Australia. Bourman will talk about what really happened in Australia, what it means for Americans, and issue a dire warning about supporting the National Rifle Association. All that and more on tonight's On Target Radio. So give us a call at 815-205-1584. That's 815-205-1584. Or go to Facebook, like our page on Target Radio, and ask a question or make a comment there.
Today's Rant of the Week and more of David's work can be found at bearingarms.com. And now, from the seething cauldron of personal opinion, it's David's Rant of the Week.
I'm just going to say this right up front. I love anti-gun liberals. They're a gift that keeps on giving. As a journalist, I live with the need to produce copy by a deadline, or what we call fill the white space. Filling the white space is almost as pervasive in the journalist world as our really stupid gun law ideas in the liberals world, making it easy to find a topic. Take, for instance, Frank Matthews. In a recent BearingArms.com article, pretty much everything you need to know about Matthews' credibility was summed up by the fact that he is president of the Outcast Voters League. I mean, seriously. If your entire high school football team took turns giving you wedgies in the hallway, would you really want to advertise it as an adult? Matthews spoke at a press conference in Birmingham, Alabama last month, promoting yet more of what liberals love to call common sense gun laws, an oxymoron if ever there was one. Of course, no gun control scheme would be worth more than 3 Pinocchio nose inch points without a tragedy to get John Q. Public in the right frame of mind. Matthews chose the tragic shooting of a woman who was killed by a stray bullet in 2013 while holding her 10-day-old baby. Co-opting a tragic event to garner sympathy merits 3 PNI. Proposing the Sherry Williams Mandatory Gun Changes Act, Matthews reassured his fellow Alabamians that he is not against gun rights, but is demanding, quote, accountability and responsibility of gun owners, unquote. It's an interesting perspective for Matthews to hold, considering there's an accompanying photo of him at the press conference holding a pistol in his hand at a public event. Now, the obvious safety concerns notwithstanding, the 60-year-old from Cleveland, Ohio, has been arrested over 30 times and done time. According to a September 8th article in 2016, in the Birmingham Times, Matthews said, while he was in jail, he found God. But apparently he didn't find a law book. He's bereft of the SCOTUS-Heller decision and the fact that you have to be a law-abiding citizen to be in possession of a firearm. Liberalism at its finest. You are supposed to adhere to accountability and responsibility, but he isn't. Add 2, PNI. The proposed law encompasses 12 points with 4 PNIs for its crown jewel requirement, mandatory gun registration. It includes a nifty card for your wallet, listing every firearm you own, which, it turns out, is not very practical, since the act also includes ending both concealed and open carry throughout the state. Pick up 4 additional PNI for total disregard of the Supreme Court and Constitution. Other highlights include mandatory gun safes with only the registered owner having the combination. What could possibly go wrong with that idea? A 3-month waiting period before you can pick up a firearm you purchased, and an extensive mental evaluation, which brings me back to Frank Matthews. At a whopping total of 13 PNI, Matthews is a gift that keeps on giving, making him an ideal candidate to be an NRA poster child. I propose we give him a pass on the mental evaluation, and instead we let him continue to free range and pay him to go on a speaking tour around the country. He'll do more to rally the pro-Second Amendment conservative voting bloc than any PAC-paid campaign ad. And that, Gretchen, is my rant for the week.
Well, you're right about the gift that keeps on giving and giving you something to write about. Where would you be without them?
Yeah, they now that I write for a publication that always has to be gun-related, at first I thought,
no problem.
No, at first I thought this may be difficult.
Oh.
It is. It's difficult to figure out which one of the moronic things that people come up with I'm going to write about. But that's what it is. Give us a call, 815-205-1584. We have with us tonight Jeff Bourman. He's a state politician from Australia. Jeff is part of the Shooters, Fishers, and Farmers Party in Victoria, a party formed to represent the interests of those people unfairly targeted by politicians and society. Already, we have a common bond on that one. Jeff got into politics after having to hand in his guns to the government 3 times, though he's never done anything wrong. It became apparent that the political parties there were not going to help stand up for law-abiding firearms owners, so he gave it a shot. Was that a pun intended there, Jeff?
Definitely. Never let an opportunity for a good pun to go unused.
You belong on this show.
That's right.
So just a little bit, particularly during our election cycle, Hillary Clinton and the Democrats kept saying over and over again, we just need common sense gun laws, like Australia has. And people have come to, particularly those who are liberal, have come to think, well, you have some, really logical laws in place. When did, well, first of all, what I'd like to do, because we are going to come up on a break here, before we go to the break, just give me a little bit of your background. Tell people what your background was in Australia.
All right. Before becoming a politician, I had a bit of a varied background. I only left high school and then just did various administrative jobs until one day in the mid-90s, I became a policeman here in Victoria. I did that for nearly 4 years, and after that, I became an IT technician. And then after about 15 years or so, I thought I'd give this politics thing a try and got in. But I've got to point out, I've been shooting for since I was 14 years old. And I'm now, let's say, a lot more than 14 years old.
The interesting thing, when I think most people think of Australia, they think about really vast open areas. I mean, it's very, very rural, is it not?
It is. We have a country roughly the size of the continental United States, but with about 25 million people. So it's all concentrated around the outside, and whilst there are some bigger towns and cities on the inside, there are vast amounts of nothing.
And there's a lot of ranching down there?
Well, a lot of the nothing is desert, but we do have a lot of farming, and it it's more to the coastal areas, but when I say that, it goes a lot deeper than the general population. But we have a lot of desert that is completely uninhabitable.
And up until they passed that law, firearms were very common, were they not?
Well, this is the problem we have. Our firearms laws were instituted in waves. Just before I got my shooter's license, and we have to have a license here as we don't have a as a right, the government in the state of Victoria, where I still live, traded off with some of the shooting community that if we allowed shooting on Sundays, then they would allow, make us register our firearms. I'm assuming back at the time it sounded all good to them, but that sounded good. But then in 1989, prior to that, semi-automatic rifles were just sort of general issues of any sort. Then in 1989, we had a couple of mass shootings by people, one with a borderline non-functional M1 carbine and another one with a M14, who just for whatever reason decided he wanted to shoot passers-by. But to cut a long story short,
we got to take a quick break. Sorry. We're going to pick that up when we come back, because now we're getting to the crux of the matter, how this all came about. So when we come back, we're going to go more into this with Jeff and how Australia got these common sense gun laws. So all that and more when we return with more On Target Radio. Give us a call, 815-205-1584.
For over 100 years, the Illinois State Rifle Association has supported the rights and freedoms of Illinois citizens to keep and bear arms. For over 100 years, the ISRA has supported the use of firearms as a sport for personal protection and as a fundamental aspect of national defense. For over 100 years, the Illinois State Rifle Association has been supporting you. Don't you think it's time you supported them? ISRA.org or 815-635-3198. The Illinois State Rifle Association, supporting you.
Safer USA, Chicago's most trusted name in firearm training, is offering beginners classes, tactical pistol and rifle, long-range rifle to 600 yards, and the most comprehensive Illinois concealed carry program available. The On Target Radio co-hosts David Lombardo and Gretchen Fritz will prepare you to carry a firearm for personal protection, including firearm, holster, and ammunition selection. A comprehensive law review designed to keep you out of trouble and even how to deal with home invasions. Firearm, ammunition, holster, class notebook, and lunch are provided. Safer USA and the Aurora Sportsman's Club invite you to participate in this one-of-a-kind Illinois concealed carry program that also qualifies you for Florida, Utah, and Arizona non-resident permits. Find out what over 6,000 students already know at saferusa.com.
Or call 815-741-3474. That's 815-741-3474. Safer USA. Choosing to own a firearm is your business. Teaching you to own it responsibly is ours.
Do you dread writing? Is it challenging to find just the right words to get your point across? Do you put off developing marketing materials because you just don't know where to start? You get one chance to make a first impression, and my editor, Creative Business Services, can help make it a strong, positive one. Hi, this is Gretchen Fritz, co-host of On Target Radio, and I'd like to tell you about My Editor, a business I started to help you overcome those concerns. What you're experiencing is very common. My Editor has helped business owners, candidates for political office, and even authors and public speakers. At My Editor Creative Business Services, we can simply edit your existing work or help you develop an entire writing plan of action from initial project design through final copy. We are easy to work with and will help you get your point across in the most effective manner. If words escape you, send me an email at myeditor@mail.com. Use My Editor Creative Business Services and go to print with confidence. That's myeditor@mail.com, or find us on Facebook.
You're listening to On Target Radio with David Lombardo and Gretchen Fritz. Here's David and Gretchen with more interesting conversation on gun control, concealed carry, freedom of speech, and other red meat issues that affect your life.
This segment is brought to you by the Will County Grassroots Division of the Illinois State Rifle Association. Join like-minded friends supporting the right to keep and bear arms in Illinois at 7 p.m. on the third Wednesday of the month at the Silver Dollar Restaurant in Elwood, Illinois.
We're talking to Jeff Bourman, who is with the Parliament in Australia, and Jeff was just beginning to get to the part where they literally had a widespread confiscation. And I guess what Americans need to understand is, how did that even lead up? How did they even get to the point that they could do that?
All right, thanks, David. The way it happened was there was tragedies, and there were two in fairly close timing to each other, and it was decided at the time that all of a sudden we weren't allowed to own semi-automatic centerfire rifles of a military nature. Now, at that stage, I only had a cheap Chinese SKS, but I'm trying to remember how old I would have been, probably my mid-20s. I'd done nothing wrong, not even a speeding ticket. And all of a sudden, I've gone from, well, you can't have this for no reason other than that. What you have to do is you have to give it to the police. The police will take it, and someone will send you a check for whatever they think it's worth later. So being a law-abiding person, I went and did this, as did most of the people at the time. The kicker, I guess, is that registration now meant that they knew who had legally had all those rifles. So it wasn't a matter of non-compliance. It was a matter of you did it or the police would be knocking on your door. There was no two ways about that. So anyway, I did that. I moved on. I bought another rifle with the money from it, as you do. And I also found there was ways of you had to join a club and you had to get a permission slip basically from the Chief Commissioner of Police to say you could have a semi-automatic rifle of a military sort of look if you belonged to a club and if you did all these sorts of things. So I joined the club, did everything plus more than what was required. And in 1996, on April the 28th, I do believe, 27th, we had the tragedy in Tasmania. The irony of that is the day after, the Monday, I was starting at the police academy to become a police officer. So halfway through my training, we had to hand in all our semi-automatics, including 22s, pump-action shotguns, semi-automatic shotguns, everything. And there was some tiny, tiny little loopholes, we'll call them, or ways you could keep them, some of them. But effectively, that was the end of semi-automatic rifles of any sort in our sporting community. Now, of course, through all this, the criminals did not bother handing anything in because they are criminals. So that's not the end of the story, unfortunately. We go upon our way. I went off and graduated from the police academy, did my own thing, though it was kind of very strange to be handing guns into the police and then the very next day going back to training to become a police officer. I figured they either trusted me or they didn't, but it doesn't work that way. So in 2002 or 2003, we had a shooting at a university here by a mentally deranged student. I think there was only 2 people killed, but magically they had this National Handgun Agreement document produced. And then all of a sudden, there was caliber restrictions. There was length restrictions, believe it or not. If the barrel was under 4 inches from memory, unless you were a dealer or a collector, that's it, all gone. I had to hand in, under those laws, 3 of my 4 handguns. And the last one that I was left with was such a piece of junk, I just gave it all away and said they can put it where the sun don't shine to be nice. And for 13 years, I didn't shoot handguns until the last couple of years where I've said, well, why not? I've still done nothing wrong. I still haven't got a speeding ticket, just for the record. It's been 30-something years and they've never managed. So I'm a member of Parliament now, which makes no difference to anything. So I went and got my handgun license, and I can only use that for target shooting. I am not allowed to use it for anything else.
One of the things that I found totally amazing, were you going to say this? Were you just
No,
about to
go
say it?
ahead.
One of the things that I found totally amazing in reading the new law, which we'll talk about in a little while, is it specifically says you cannot use a firearm for self-defense.
Correct.
That's...
However, can I?
Yeah,
I might clarify it even.
My
a little
American
bit more.
head is exploding at that.
Yeah, please clarify it, because that just drives me nuts.
It gets better in this state of Victoria, and I would suggest most of the states in Australia. You are not allowed anything at all to defend yourself. If I have my phone here and I say, this is my phone, it's legal. If I say this is to hit someone with, then it's a weapon and I can be charged. There is some ridiculous things. Many years ago, a woman was charged with having hairspray in her handbag because she obviously gave the wrong answer at the time and said it wasn't for her hair and said it was for self-defense. So we live in a society where we 100% rely on the police, and our poor police, the people on the streets, can't cope.
We have a saying here in the U.S. Gretchen was a state cop, I was a county cop. And the saying is, when seconds count, we're only minutes away.
Police are minutes away.
Yeah.
Yep. We have a different type of violent crime here, though I've got to say it is definitely changing. We have had very little in the way of carjackings and home invasions. So, if I was to put my Australian hat on as opposed to American hat or possibly logical hat, our police were doing a fine job. They had the resources, they were able to keep up. The violent crime was generally fairly localised. Unfortunately, usually domestic related, but it was not the average sort of person just walking in the streets getting carjacked or whatever. But that's starting to change now, and we're still not allowed anything. I'm even getting huge resistance pushing for non-lethal self-defense, such as spray or tasers. The government won't even entertain it.
I know in Great Britain, specifically, if you defend yourself, doesn't say with what, if you defend yourself, you can be arrested for that.
Well, in Victoria, and this is my, I guess my bonus of being an ex-policeman, we have a section of our Crimes Act which logically governs the crimes that and the punishment that can be handed out. We have a section 462A of the Crimes Act which says you can use force to defend yourself. But the irony of it is, unless you are physically capable, you've got no way of defending yourself. I'm a fairly big guy. I've been trained. I have no problems in thinking about defending myself, but my wife or the average sort of woman walking down the street, if something happens to them, well, that's great that they've got the legal right to defend themselves, but if they're not able to, then what's the point?
Sure, I agree. You're listening to On Target Radio. Give us a call, 815-205-1584. We had on Facebook was just loaded with people who basically were indicating they were gonna watch. So they're being real quiet.
Lots of people were sharing it out. One of the things that I found so shocking about your law is that basically you jump through all these hoops. You get obviously you have to get your own background check. You apply for a license, and then every time you want to buy a gun, you have to apply for a license for each specific gun. But just to get the ability to have a gun, it takes at least 6 months, and then once you jump through all these hoops, you're only permitted to own one .22 caliber rimfire pistol and one .177 caliber air pistol, or one centerfire pistol and a .177 air pistol. So you jump through all these ridiculous flaming hoops, and then you're still not even able to own anything that's worth anything.
Well, I'm not going to denigrate the people that like air pistols and .22 pistols, but
well,
that's
fine
only
for target
for
practice.
handguns.
Yeah.
Yeah, I know. That's for handguns, but if either you're safe or you're not, and that's my whole crux of my whole argument. License the person, in our case, you've got a right, but license the person, not the item. If I'm capable and safe to have a .22 pistol, why am I unsafe to have a 9mm pistol? And why all these restrictions? If there was any public safety outcome, is a phrase I tend to use. If there was any public safety outcome to any of this, I'd be 100% behind it. I stick my ex-policeman hat on. If it's going to save lives, that's fine. But this is just bureaucracy and red tape gone mad for the effect of just doing it to us because they can. No one can tell me how it's going to save a life.
There's nothing in your Constitution. See, we have the Second Amendment. And, of course, as you know, because you've been here, I met you at SHOT Show, that's hotly debated between liberals and conservatives. Conservatives are very strict in their interpretation. Liberals say it's a living Constitution and it changes. The freedom of speech part never changes for them, but, the Second Amendment part changes for us. But you don't have anything like that in the Constitution, do you?
No, our constitution is a holdover from our British colonial days. If I were to really grossly simplify it, we can do anything we like unless it's legislated against, which you can see the problem with that, and that's where we are now. There is, I think, it's freedom of practice of religion, and there's freedom of something else that escapes me. There's only two actual rights enshrined anywhere and anything, but neither of them actually define our day-to-day life. It was just a couple of things I thought were great at the time. And then we've got this massive document which effectively sets up statehoods and this and that in the country and whatever, but it does nothing about what the government can't do to us. Effectively it tells us what the government can do to us.
Of course, our Constitution was written specifically based on your Constitution and what we didn't like about it. You know, they looked at King George was tyrannical, and they took the British monarchy and basically said, no, none of this can happen. You can't quarter troops. You can't do this. We have a right to bear arms to protect ourselves from the tyranny of the Brits.
Right. Well, I guess the major difference between the way our gun laws eventuated and our constitution eventuated compared to Australia versus the US is that you guys threw the British out, and the British left us. Well, there was no war, there was no violence, there was no sort of we are the people. It was we've had enough, our empire's shrinking. Federate in 1901, and you're off and running. We don't want much more to do with you. There was a few small constitutional things which are virtually gone now, if not completely gone. But there was no radical change. They just more or less said, well, here's a constitution, you guys sort it out. There was no need to worry about tyrannical governments. There was no need to worry about the rights and the freedom of the people because they just left.
Yeah. We're going to have to take another quick break, but interesting stuff. And when we come back, I specifically, you don't have an equivalent to the NRA in Australia, but you have some interesting thoughts on that. So when we come back, I definitely want to just have you talk a little bit about what some of the people feel like in Australia about the NRA and how that could really be bad for us if we do that. So we're going to come back and talk that again with Jeff Bourman when we return with more on Target Radio. Give us a call, 815-205-1584.
Hi, I'm David Lombardo, co-host of On Target Radio, and I'd like to offer you a partnership opportunity. For over 4 years, On Target Radio covered the red meat issues that affect your life, from gun control to freedom of speech on AM 560 The Answer. But a 1-minute commercial was $200, making it tough to find enough sponsors. So last November, we left AM 560 and began podcasting. There's a learning curve to podcasting, and we've worked through the kinks and would now like to make you an offer. You can have a 60-second audio or video commercial for as little as $25 a week. We can also offer fellow conservatives their own radio or video podcast for as little as $100 a week with equipment and technical personnel included. You provide the content and host, plus get 6 free minutes of commercial time you can sell yourself. If you'd like to be an On Target Radio sponsor or explore the possibility of having your own show, call me at 815-741-3474 and let's explore the possibilities together.
For over 100 years, the Illinois State Rifle Association has supported the rights and freedoms of Illinois citizens to keep and bear arms. For over 100 years, the ISRA has supported the use of firearms as a sport for personal protection and as a fundamental aspect of national defense. For over 100 years, the Illinois State Rifle Association has been supporting you. Don't you think it's time you supported them? ISRA.org or 815-635-3198. The Illinois State Rifle Association, supporting you.
You're listening to On Target Radio with David Lombardo and Gretchen Fritz. Here's David and Gretchen with more interesting conversation on gun control, concealed carry, freedom of speech, and other red meat issues that affect your life.
All right, we're back with more on Target Radio, and our guest this evening is Jeff Bourman. He's a member of Parliament in Australia. We're talking about common sense gun laws, or at least what the Liberals like to call common sense gun laws. So in Australia, you don't really have like the NRA, and you had made an observation to me about how people feel about our National Rifle Association. It's really interesting. Go ahead and share that.
Do you have your microphone muted?
Yes.
He's
I'll
back.
start again. My apologies for that.
Quite all right.
Yes, we don't have any NRA-type organisations, though we have a few fledgling groups that are working towards it, I guess. But the difference is looking after our rights, and our rights are different to the US rights. But the NRA is held up as almost a terrorist organisation by our media, and that would be just about all our media, because of the fact that they will not budge on anything. Now, looking at it, this is the problem. People seem to think that we can transpose the problems with gun laws in either state or in either country to the other country. We're not. We are two totally separate cultures, I guess. When I come over to America, I stand out not because of my the way I look, but the way I act, the things I say, and that's just because of the way it is. So we get this whole NRA thing. Oh, don't go all NRA on us, and don't do this. And the NRA is killing people because they won't allow assault weapon bans and all this sort of thing. And it's actually, there are a few shooters that still buy on to that sort of thing. Now, my dealings with the NRAs, their purpose is almost the same as mine, looking after shooters' rights, but they're just not in the political arena directly.
Yeah, and the thing about the NRA, liberalism, and I'm a Vietnam vet, and North Vietnam, there was no way that you really could beat them. I mean, you could beat them into submission, which we almost did, but you could not actually stop them because they were patient. Every time they would make one advancement, they might go backward too, but then they just step forward again. It's the same thing with liberals and anti-gun. They go, well, we just need this one little thing. We just have to have this one thing because that'll make everybody safer, just this. And then they give it to them, and instantly they go, okay, now we just need this one thing. And so the NRA is the line in the sand approach. Make them fight like, Normandy or Iwo Jima for every inch of territory. And so they do. They draw the line in the sand for sometimes with things you go, well, come on. But the reality is you constantly keep them fighting because literally in the long run, they're winning. The opposition is winning. And that's what they're trying to stave off. They're trying to slow that down.
Yep, and that's 100% right. Every time you give away anything, then all you're doing is that's the next step. It's a death of 1,000 cuts. The first cut won't be the jugular, but you'll be bleeding a little bit. And then that would be registration, and then it'll be permits to acquire, and then there's another little cut. And it all sounds reasonable, but then all of a sudden you're bleeding profusely. Now, I have one rule of thumb about any of law and order type topics, of which this is one. What's the public safety outcome? If I do this, what is that going to do to help the public? And all these things, expanded background checks and that for the US, you're already subject to doing a background check. So if that background check isn't good enough, then the questions need to be asked as why you're doing it at all. If you're going to do a background check, you do a good one. We want to keep the guns out of the criminals' hands, and making it harder for the law-abiding to pursue their sport, or in your case, your right, it's just completely counterintuitive and indefensible if there's if you can't prove that what you want is actually going to do something.
Well, and that's exactly true. There are people who, every time there is any kind of tragedy, and obviously nobody wants that, but they literally step over a body to start proselytizing about gun control. And what they do is, this poor guy laying on the ground who was shot with a revolver, let's say, they go, we need more gun control, we have to ban ARs. The number of people killed with assault weapons, as they like to refer to them, is infinitesimal. People are killed with handguns.
Yeah, definitely. Assault weapons, and I use that term cynically, because an assault weapon is a select fire rifle as per the M16. It is not an AR-15.
Right.
Assault rifles, I think last time I checked, the FBI said less than 1,000 people per year in America. Yet handguns, as you said, illegal handguns, are killing multitudes. So it's all about control. It's not about public safety. Taking an AR-15 away from you or Gretchen or anyone like that is not going to do one iota when you look at Chicago as an example. You've got such a gang problem. Why aren't they spending all that time and that money trying to figure out how to fix that and that will reduce crime? It's actually quite simple. Less criminals with guns means less crime. Less good people with guns means nothing.
Yeah, and another thing that you're saying, there has to be some measurable outcome. We have here for handguns, we have a 3-day waiting period between the time that you buy it and the time that you can pick it up. And for long guns, we have a 24-hour waiting period. You guys have a 28-day waiting period. Again, what is the logic behind that? How does that make anyone safer?
What's the point?
Yes.
The point is exactly the same, but it gets better because we have to have a license. The license for a long arm, for instance, it takes you a month or two at the least. You've got to put in an application to go and do a firearm safety course, then you do your firearm safety course, then you put in your application, and of course, just with the wheels of bureaucracy turning as they do, sooner or later a license will pop out. Then you've got to go and get your photo taken, they create that, and then all of a sudden there you are with your shiny new license, and they say, all right, you've got another 28 days. This is all because they think that you're going to go through a couple of month period to kill your domestic partner, and therefore you've got to have that extra 28 days just in case after a couple of months you haven't cooled down. Again, it's ridiculous. It's just, it does nothing.
See, one of the key things that you said, and it's a hot issue in this country, you have to register guns. And when they said turn in semi-automatic rifles, you had zero choice because they know exactly who you are. They know you got it.
That is 100% correct. The 3 times I've handed in firearms, they knew exactly what I had. And look, to be honest, even if they didn't have registration, maybe I'm being a bit naive, but I would have done the right thing at the time. But that's called being law-abiding, and that's what they bank on, because they know the criminals won't do anything because they'd just ignore it. That's their purpose. So they think, well, these people are good people. They're all generally family people. They've got good upbringings. They've never done anything really bad, or else they wouldn't have a license. We know that if we put this public squeeze on them, that they'll hand it in, and we generally did.
Yeah, and we've talked about this on the show a number of times over the years, and that is the concept behind law is that you have a belief in a higher power. You believe in God. You believe in, you
right
have to answer to something. You believe in right and wrong. Because the truth is, and you got a lot more open space. Actually, the U.S. has huge amounts of open space, but you have a lot of open space. And the truth is there's no way they can enforce laws, not adequately, if the population refuses to submit themselves to it. And they do that by the fact it's that Judeo-Christian ethic where I have to do the right thing, and that's used against you.
Interestingly enough, it goes back to the difference in the birth of our countries too. Your country was born by civil disobedience. Our country wasn't. So the whole concept of civil disobedience to that scale isn't nothing new to you. It's completely unheard of here. And I won't say we're serfs or subjects or anything like that. It's just part of our culture in that we're used to just doing what we're told as long as it seems reasonable, and if there's a problem you put political pressure on and so on, and it's all very genteel. But having said that, of course there's always some people that are a little disobedient, and the thing with gun control is if you're with gun registration I should say, if it's not registered, the government has no idea where it is. That goes for criminals particularly. But I know in some parts of the country where they didn't have gun registration prior to 1996, there's no proof, but there's absolutely no evidence that everyone turned in everything because the government has no clue.
Sure.
And that goes back to the NRA fighting our gun control lobby, our liberals at every step, because as you say, we can't give in to them as far as letting them institute registration and all these types of schemes, because legislation or registration tends to lead to confiscation eventually.
Americans who haven't traveled internationally have somewhat a hard time understanding that there are dramatic cultural differences among nations. For instance, I covered Asia as a journalist, and I was over there a lot. The Japanese, who are fine people, very repressed, And if a policeman in Japan can literally go into your house anytime he wants, he has that right. And you can't say anything about it, and they don't. They just accept it as the government's right to be able to do that. They're not forced. That's what they grew up. That's what they understand. Your observation is absolutely true. Our country was formed in a foundry of a lot of fire and a lot of anger, and that's the whole point of the Second Amendment. We will not let another country take us over. But the biggest thing lately is we don't want our own government to take us over, and that's what's happening.
Yeah, look, I'll be 100%. I agree with that. And the observation I'll make about the Second Amendment is that you've got the Liberals there that want to get rid of that. If they get rid of that, then your First Amendment right of free speech, your Second Amendment your Fifth Amendment right to not incriminate yourself. I think Fourth is something about seizures. All they go out the window. You can't just cherry pick whichever one you want to take down. As soon as you take one, the rest of them are up for grabs, and that's how you end up just spiraling towards something you really don't want.
And I mean that
we say that all the time.
Yeah, that is spot on, as they say in the mother country. Spot on. And a lot of people don't get it. We interviewed a guy some years ago named Eric Zorn, and he's a journalist, writes for the Chicago Tribune. And I'm going to have to go here. I got 20 seconds, but. And he's a good guy, and he's not anti-gun. For a liberal, it's amazing. He's not anti-gun. But he does not get the Second Amendment. He relates the Second Amendment to personal protection. The Second Amendment really has nothing to do with personal protection. It has to do with King George, and it has to do with protecting ourselves from our own government. Tyranny. And that's what liberals who happen to like guns, which are rare, still don't get. They still don't understand that difference. When we come back, we're going to kind of wrap it all up, but we are going to talk about you don't have enough gun control yet, so they're taking another swipe at you. You got another one coming up. So we're going to talk about the next, or as Paul Harvey would say, the rest of the story when we're back with more On Target Radio.
Safer USA, Chicago's most trusted name in firearm training, is offering beginners classes, tactical pistol and rifle, long-range rifle to 600 yards, and the most comprehensive Illinois concealed carry program available. The On Target Radio co-hosts David Lombardo and Gretchen Fritz will prepare you to carry a firearm for personal protection, including firearm, holster, and ammunition selection. A comprehensive law review designed to keep you out of trouble and even how to deal with home invasions. Firearm, ammunition, holster, class notebook, and lunch are provided. Safer USA and the Aurora Sportsman's Club invite you to participate in this one-of-a-kind Illinois concealed carry program that also qualifies you for Florida, Utah, and Arizona non-resident permits. Find out what over 6,000 students already know at saferusa.com.
Or call 815-741-3474. That's 815-741-3474. Safer USA. Choosing to own a firearm is your business. Teaching you to own it responsibly is ours.
In need of a ride to O'Hare or Midway Airport? Well, look no further. The Yellow Checker Cab Company is the cab company for you. With the Yellow Checker Cab Company, you will always be greeted by a friendly face and arrive safely and on time for your flight. Start your trip off right by taking advantage of one of their limos, shuttle vans, cabs, or courtesy cars. And airport trips are not all they specialize in. This 24-hour cab service will pick you up anytime, any day, for any occasion. occasion. From bachelorette parties to school dances to just a night out with friends, Yellow Checker Cab Company has the best rates in town. So sit back, relax, and leave the driving to the professionals. Once you experience their fast and affordable cab service, you'll be a customer for life. When it comes to cab companies, be sure to choose Yellow Checker Cab because you have the right to expect certain things from your cab company. For further information or to book your trip today, call 815-744-2900. That's 815-744-2900.
You're listening to On Target Radio with David Lombardo and Gretchen Fritz. Here's David and Gretchen with more interesting conversation on gun control, concealed carry, freedom of speech, and other red meat issues that affect your life. Stand by. Here's Gretchen with your action items for the week.
Don't forget, Illinois Gun Owners Lobby Day is Wednesday, April 5th in Springfield. Grunt Style has designed a shirt just for iGold 2017. I put the link on Facebook last week. The following Safer USA classes are at our facility in Waterman. Saturday and Sunday, April 8th and 9th, Illinois Concealed Carry 1. This 16-hour class will be taught by David and Gretchen and meets the training requirements for Illinois Concealed Carry as well as Florida, Arizona, and Utah. Saturday, April 29th, Tactical Pistol 1 and 2, taught by David. To sign up for classes, go to saferusa.com and click on register.
And we're back with Jeff Bourman. We have a call, Jeff, believe it or not. Raymond is on the line. Raymond, how you doing this evening? Can you hear me, Raymond?
Yes, I'm here.
How you doing?
Good, very good. And you all have a good show tonight. David, you hit on a question or a point that I often see gun rights people shy away from. You talk about the purpose of the Second Amendment being to defend ourselves against an overbearing government. I have to ask you a question. At a time when we're trying to show policemen support and solidarity because they're being beset on, we do understand that the day that Nancy Pelosi or government oversteps itself, it's going to be the policemen that we're up against, more than likely. But we don't discuss that. And I understand why we don't, but it does bear discussion at some point. Do you understand where I'm going with this?
I do. It looks like David doesn't, but I do.
Only because there's an echo. I think you're feeding back on your computer. I'm having a hard time hearing exactly what it was. But if you did, go ahead.
Okay.
And David has said this many times that we don't believe that most police officers will be willing to go door to door and confiscate weapons because most police officers are pro Second Amendment and they are sworn to defend the Constitution. And there's nothing in the Constitution that says that they should do that. And so we believe that a lot of police officers will refuse to comply with that order that they're given by their superiors or by the government, as a whole.
I would like to believe that, but I never know. I don't know how. I don't know how that thing will manifest itself. It might be confiscation of guns. It may be confiscation of personal survival supply when there's a national emergency. I don't know what it would be. And so I personally don't have a lot of confidence in that because when times are difficult, police have a job, it's a paycheck, and I just don't know how many cops are going to be so committed to our constitutional rights as opposed to their personal need to keep a job and survive.
Listen, Raymond.
Can I weigh in with a comment?
Yeah, go ahead, because this is like he's listened to our show, because we've said that very thing. Go ahead, Jeff.
Yeah, this is a discussion I've had with a couple of people whilst I've been in America.
And I'll leave it.
In that a lot of people have said, out of my cold, dead hands. And I've said, well, what's going to happen? You get the policeman come to the door, and that man or woman is earning a paycheck, as Raymond said. Are you really going to kill him? or let him kill you over something like this. So a lot of people have to think this through, and I guess my message is you can't rely on the Second Amendment alone. You actually have to think about getting political, and that's been my message, because the same way they rely on us being the law-abiding people to hand in our firearms and that they're registered, they will rely on the fact that you'll be standing there, you'll be a person of good repute, you've got a police officer doing their job. Are you going to kill them over an object? And that'll be what they bank on. So the trick is to never get to that point. Never allow it to get there. And shooters in Australia have, I think there's nearly 2 million of us now. It's a matter of mobilising people politically just to look after their sport. And in this case, you're right. You can't just assume someone else will do it for you.
Your organization that you're president of, is that
chairman?
Chairman, is that sort of? I mean, is that a gun rights type thing?
Look, the answer is yes and no. We don't have rights as such, but what we're trying to stick up for is the law-abiding shooters, and we've expanded to fishermen and farmers because they are also generally feeling the pinch of, we call them the lefties, but it's normally animal rights people and general the urbanisation of society, where people don't realise that food, for instance, does come from a paddock and did wander around and moo or whatever. It doesn't just appear in a tray. We're trying to look after the people that are not getting a proper voice in politics.
So, a big surprise, more gun control. Has that already been enacted, or is that proposed?
All right, my favourite subject. I'll hold this up. I don't know if you'll be able to read it. This is the new National Firearms Agreement.
Yep.
This was created by bureaucrats behind closed doors. There was no input from anyone from at least the shooting industry, and that could mean from associations, political parties, or someone just with a gun license. Now, in that whole document, of which is 14 pages, there is not one thing about reducing crime. They've gone to all this trouble and they're proposing more restrictions, but there is not one thing about how they're going to deal with criminals. And I actually find that that is basically offensive, because they're not even trying to pretend that this is about crime fighting. It's now just about what else they can do to us because they've got away with it before.
Hillary Clinton was recorded in a private meeting. She's always said, well, I'm just for sensible gun control, we just want to protect people. And she was recorded. These days with electronic recording devices and all the equipment they have, you should know better than to open your mouth. And she was in a big fundraiser.
There's always a hot mic somewhere.
That's right. And she was in a fundraiser, big money people, saying to them, we're gonna just do away with the Second Amendment. Once I'm elected, and she gets her Supreme Court justice appointed, which tilts the court, she says, we're just going to do away with it. We're just going to confiscate all the guns, not knowing that she was being recorded at the time. And, that was the attitude that she had.
There is no compromise with these sorts of people. It's the same as animal activists. The only compromise is that they will take what they can now and get the rest later. It's not like we'll sit there and shake hands and say, all right, this is a done deal and we'll move on. We'll call them gun grabbers, anti-gun people, whatever you want to call them, their one aim is to get rid of all firearms. I mean, it's completely fanciful because it's impossible. You can't stuff the genie back in the bottle, and the criminals won't obey anything they do, but that's their aim. They make no secret about it. We have 3 people here in an organisation grandly called Gun Control Australia who seem to, they lead the whole narrative, but they just say every time something comes up, they want a bit more, they want a bit more. They will not ever give up until at least civilian firearm ownership is gone. Well, at least legal civilian firearm ownership.
Yeah, I 100% agree with you about the political, that you have to get political. For anyone in the United States who thinks that, oh, we got Trump elected, everything's cool now, the answer is no. And same thing with, the ISRA, the Illinois State Rifle Association struggles with this constantly, that now that we got concealed carry in Illinois, that we were 50 out of 50 to get concealed carry, and now we got what we wanted and we can relax. The answer is no. Everybody has to be involved politically, even if it's just making sure that everyone that votes pro Second Amendment, pro gun. Everybody has to be involved on some level. So whether it's actually running for office, actually being a precinct committeeman and knocking on doors, whatever it is, everybody has to do it.
One of the funny things that happened here,
totally
Jeff,
agree.
One of the funny things that happened here is the liberals, of course, since Trump won the election. And by the way, did you just read I think it was this morning's news that they've discovered, this is from National Public Radio, which is like the mouthpiece of the Democratic Party.
Yeah, it doesn't get any farther left than that.
This is as far left as you can get. NPR announced 25 million fraudulent votes for Hillary Clinton. That's right from the mouthpiece of the Democratic Party. So the interesting, which obviously then tips, if that's true, it completely tips the election, and Trump wins in a landslide.
And if it's true, you can go ahead and multiply it by 2.
Yeah, exactly.
If it's coming from NPR.
But here's the interesting thing. So these anti-gun people are saying there's going to be a revolution. We're going to take the streets. We're going to take up arms. Oh, really? The people who don't like guns are going to come after the 400 million guns that are lawfully owned by people who shoot regularly and get training. I'm waiting for that
With
one.
what is my question.
They'll be throwing lukewarm lattes at each other. Don't worry about it.
Well, and that's probably true. I wouldn't be surprised.
That's about
right. It's dicey over here, to be honest with you. They're they're taken to the streets. They're burning police cars. They're shooting cops. I mean, it's not good. It is not good.
And the ironic thing is, though, that as bad as it is, for the number of guns that we have, if everything that the liberals said were true, it should be so much worse than it is.
Well, and that appeared on Facebook. Somebody once said, if the 400 million gun owners in this country were the problem, trust me, you wouldn't have to read the paper to figure it out.
Yeah, and that's true. And again, this goes back to the whole crux of what we call gun control is not about criminals or reducing violence. And that's what I find really abhorrent, because no one wants other people murdered. I mean, even if you're in a gang and it's kind of an occupational hazard, it would be far better if they weren't shooting each other. 750 murders in Chicago last year, I do believe. It would be nice if people were able to walk down the streets of Chicago without having to see or worry about that. But by taking the guns off you people, it's going to make zero difference. Absolutely zero difference.
If anything, it'll make it worse.
You're absolutely right. Jeff, I really appreciate you coming on the show tonight. And when you come to Chicago,
my pleasure.
Make sure you give me a call. You can go shoot an AR with me.
Yep, and I will most certainly do that, because despite not being able to have one here, I had to hand in some semi-automatic rifles in 1996, and I still miss them.
I got tons of them, so you're on when you come in. All right, we'd like to. That's it. We'd like to thank Jeff Bourman for taking the time to be our guest and from the other side of the world. And we'd like to thank you for listening tonight. We appreciate it if you tell your friends about On Target Radio.
We'd also like to thank our engineer, Eric Allen, especially for tonight, getting the Skype working. That's amazing. Yellow Cab Company, my editor, Creative Business Services, the Will County Grassroots Division of the ISRA, the Illinois State Rifle Association, the Aurora Sportsman's Club, and Safer USA.
And so make sure you plan a trip. When you say you won't be this year, but maybe next year?
Look, yeah, this coming up January, it's a bit dicey whether I'll be able to make it, but at some point in time, I might even try and make it in the summer, just so that I don't have to put up with the Chicago winter. I will come and visit.
There's something to be said for that.
We will take good care of you. We'll take you out to good food. We'll take you out to the club. I'm president of a 268-acre club, and we'll shoot for a day. Thanks, Jeff, and thanks to everybody else.
Thanks
and finally, I hope that you will listen next week when we're going to have a cop in.
On next week's On Target Radio, we will be talking to Tom Gilligan, a current Bensonville police officer. We will ask him about his experience working as a law enforcement officer since Illinois got concealed carry. So be sure to watch and send your questions in on Facebook or give us a call.
Traffic stop, traffic stop.